I am joined on today's episode once again by Dr. Michael Callanan, and we are going to be discussing becoming a more effective leader as a small business owner.
I think it's important just to kind of reset the context, what we talked about in the last episode, and why leadership. Does leadership matter? Is it going to matter for me? And we said that whether you're a small business, whether you're a large Fortune 500 company, anywhere in between, the beauty of this leadership construct is that it offers opportunities for us to improve our business, to gain a competitive advantage, to improve our profitability by leveraging these leadership constructs. And so that's kind of where we left off with just this notion about, not thinking that leadership is just for the big guys. As a small business, there's a piece for us to use to be able to leverage it to drive our performance and the results in our organization. And to think no matter what it is we're doing, it doesn't matter what context we're working in, providing services, products to clients, we can find ways to use these leadership constructs to create a competitive advantage for us and the business and our strategic goals and objectives.
And today we're going to kick off what it takes to become a more effective leader with a discussion on self-awareness and kind of breaking down some of the elements of emotional intelligence.
Sure. To set the context, I work with a lot of businesses of all sizes, and many of the business owners tend to think that they can build on the recipe for success that was handed down to them in a family-run business from the 50s, the 60s, from their grandmother, their mother, their father, their grandfather. And I think there's an important distinction to make. One is that the world in which many of your businesses were built no longer exists. We talked a little bit in the first episode about this idea about the world today is a VUCA world. It's a volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. And so the first premise is that you have to accept that the world has fundamentally changed and is continuing to fundamentally change from the world that your business maybe was built in. I want you to pull those cultural and those important elements that built the business forward, but I want you to be willing to think differently about some of these leadership constructs. So the first one, you mentioned this idea about self-awareness. Well, let's back up from that and talk a little bit about what are these competencies that you have to have first. You have to have skills and abilities to be more effective as a leader. The good news is organizations like Center for Creative Leadership that have been, studying leadership for decades have been able to narrow down a list of skills and abilities that really are critically important to become a more effective leader. And the first one, Casey, as you pointed out, is this idea about self-awareness. This idea as a leader in an important leadership role in your small business, understanding your own capabilities, your own competencies, understanding what you lack, being honest with where you sit in terms of those skills and competencies, and being really, able to understand how you bring your experience to a problem and what that says about your ability to solve the problem. So self-awareness is this first skill and ability that every leader, and especially those in small businesses, need to have. Now, what's interesting about this self-awareness is it's really the cornerstone of the emotional intelligence construct that maybe some of you have read about and heard about. Been around for many years, popularized by Daniel Goleman's work. Now, we all know what IQ is and our intelligence quotient. This emotional intelligence is more about your EQ. And it's built around, 4 or 5 different constructs. 1, self-awareness, as we just talked about. 2, self-regulation. The ability to regulate emotions, the ability to control yourself, in situations, recognize the context and the situation and self-regulate. And I think many of us have worked for or with others that have struggled in their self-regulation, haven't they? To be honest with you, as a leader, that was one of the things I struggled with. very emotional, and it's hard sometimes to be able to regulate your emotions, but it's really important to your effectiveness as a leader. And the third piece is this idea of motivation. As small business owners, you're self-motivated. You're there long after everyone's gone home, long after the doors have closed, and committed to doing what it takes, professionally and personally, to build a successful small business. And the fourth one might surprise many of you. It's this idea of empathy. And I think, particularly in light of the Great Resignation and the incredible challenge we've seen over the last, 2 years or so, as employers are called on to reconsider the experience they create for not just their customers, but for their employees, it's important that you be empathic as a leader. It's important that you understand what other people on your team are going through. And this may not be on many people's job descriptions list, Casey, but I can't emphasize enough how critical it is today, especially in the world we find ourselves in today, that you as a leader demonstrate empathy. Now, that's not just about being nice. It's not about being easy, about being soft. It's about being understanding. It's about understanding the challenges that your team, that the people you're working with day in and day out. And the last one, what good is it if you have all of these abilities and you're lacking in social skills and you really struggle with your people skills? And I know I've seen it, over and over again, and maybe some of you have as well. People with really good technical skills, but they struggle in their relations and working with people. And so if you lack those social skills, you're really going to struggle, when it comes to your ability to become a more effective leader.